Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, the most evil YouTuber ever, because I am the spawn of the Satan Shark. And my friends, turns out the Satan Shark, you know I talk about it more often than not. It's actually going to be in the news today among a lot of other Virtua Fighter news. Our friends over at Sega have been making the rounds after the big Summer Game Fest announcement. And we have lots of news and info about the game and around the game from just a myriad of sources. So check the video description. I'll have all the links for you if you want to read all the interviews in full, because there's so much to go over. I can't go through everything, but I want to give you the big hits of what is being talked about in Virtua Fighter land right now. So let's start with a big one here from Den Faminico Gamer. This is not a revival of Virtua Fighter so much as it is a reincarnation. Specifically, the new Virtua Fighter Crossroads, since we now have the title, this is not a sequel, a remake, or a remaster. It is effectively a completely new game that just transcends the boundaries of conventional fighting games. Like, naturally, yes, this does keep in mind the previous games, in the terms that this is definitely set after the events of Virtua Fighter 5, and we'll get more into that later. But the goal here is to do something big. In the Den Faminico Gamer interview here, there is mentioning here when Virtua Fighter released, hey, it was a 3D fighting game at the time when 2D ran the market. And it made tons of waves at the time. And every Virtua Fighter release since has done something big in just general gaming sense, more than just being a mere sequel. And they're looking to do much the same with Virtua Fighter Crossroads. And for Crossroads, we'll have the classic Virtua Fighter gameplay, just re-envisioned a little bit, but also narrative. This is RGG Studio. They make the Yakuza games. They make tons of compelling stories and characters. They have Stranger Than Heaven coming up as well, which we might talk about separately on the channel at a later time. Look forward to that. But they are looking to create a Virtua Fighter like no other, something that creates and transcends the boundaries of traditional fighting games. Virtua Fighter already had realism and innovation as core concepts and pillars of its gameplay, and now the narrative and the whole single-player aspect is going to be a big part of that. A third pillar, if you will, they're looking to deliver a new experience by combining Virtua Fighter's core values of realism and innovation with RGG's strength in the narrative aspect. And on the narrative aspect, so this is a work that respects the past settings and is an extension of them. So Virtua Fighter famously is very low on the story, setting, world building, and characters, like just anything lore, right? But what is there will be respected. In this specific interview mentioned Judgment 6. So in the context of Judgment 6, sort of like the Mishima Zaibatsu or Shadaloo from like other fighting games. It's the evil organization that ran things, right? So they say Judgment 6 has collapsed and a new order is taking over. This new Southeast Asian fictional city, which is very much based on the Philippines, Villa Sapara. Here, the Yakuza rule, and basically there's no guns, no weapons, but everyone fights for respect. Although the old-timers, like Akira, like Wolf, they remember how things used to be. Now, on the new characters, and this is also from Den Faminico, so the new characters are the main focus, kind of story-wise going forward. The new single-player story mode focuses on these four characters, although, of course, the more classical Virtua Fighter characters will appear in the story. The main character you've seen so far in all the footage, that is Cielo, and he is born in Paraguay. Lived in the USA for a time but couldn't adapt, and that's how he wound up in Villa Sapara, where he's looking to make a name for himself as a fighter. And he's sort of there to be like the relatable everyman. You know, coming of age story, personal growth, all that kind of stuff. But everyone has their own little hitch in the story. So they're not naming names for every character here, but they're saying some characters are a bit more darker, serious tone. One character's story plays out more like a detective story, which, I don't know, call it stereotypical, but I think it's very much this character on the right. Kind of has that vibe, maybe trying to figure out what happened to Judgment 6. But I guess who knows for sure till the time comes. But yeah, so the characters will interact with each other. They also have all the sub-characters that you see in the various cutscenes. And they did mention that the relationships that the characters have with each other will have an effect on the actual gameplay, which is a bit odd. Like your S-Link with the big guy with the beard went up so you can juggle higher. I don't know how that'll work exactly, right? But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But one of the reasons the new characters are the new characters and are the head of the story is because they want the players to be like, have these people in the forefront. Because in this interview, they use a Street Fighter comparison, but like Luke is supposed to be the new Ryu, right? That obviously never happened. No one is buying Luke as the face of Street Fighter, to be super real. That didn't work with Alex in Street Fighter 3. It didn't work with Abel in Street Fighter 4. It didn't work with Rashid in Street Fighter 5. It didn't work with Luke in Street Fighter 6. Ryu is Ryu, and he is the face of the game. So with these new characters being the face of the story mode, it's essential, in their own words, essential that players grow to like these 4 new characters in the scenario we provide. They aren't necessarily here to like replace Akira, Wolf, Pai as like the faces of the game, but they are definitely not here just to be forgotten in the background. And when newer characters are added in the future, they will naturally create proper storylines for them. I'm assuming they mean in the context of DLC, but everyone gets a story. Now, this one comes here from IGN Japan, and why is Southeast Asia chosen as the new setting for the game? The Virtua Fighter team would go on to say, when creating a fictional city where people from diverse backgrounds come together and fight, I felt like Japan was not a good fit, so I ruled it out immediately. On the other hand, while cities like Los Angeles are certainly international, when we Japanese create them, they inevitably feel artificial. That's when I personally found Southeast Asia to be a more appealing option. And the setting of Villa Sapara, while it is certainly a conglomeration of like a lot of Southeastern Asian cultures and countries and cities, it is definitely most inspired by the Philippines specifically. So this one's actually covered in a bunch of the interviews, but yeah, Pai got old. She's still obviously beautiful, but she got visibly older, and that is not something that's generally, well, frankly, allowed in fighting game characters that are ladies, to look older. Guys, sure, whatever. Ladies, not so much. The only fighting game lady to ever look visibly older in any fighting game was like Sonya and MKX. Everyone else, they either look the same like Chun-Li, she just dresses more mature, she doesn't actually look any older, or they do nonsense like cryo freezing for Nina and Tekken, or like Curse of the Soul Edge for Ivy and Soul Calibur. Despite 20, 30 years going by, they still look the same. Pai looks a bit older. And in my personal opinion, that's a very good thing. Specifically in the 4Gamer interview, it's brought up that Wolf and Pai both look a lot older than they used to be. And Richiro Yamada, the producer, he brought up, it is sometimes said that Japanese game characters do not age, but RGG Studio games are different. I believe aging is important and depicting a realistic story. Virtua Fighter itself has been greatly influenced by Kung Fu movies. If you consider the cinematic aspects and drama, it's natural for the characters to age. There is some resistance within the team, but I thought that depicting aging in a cool way was one of the things that should be done in Virtua Fighter Crossroads. And this is from RGG Studio. This is the king of middle-aged characters. No one makes a 40-plus-year-old character better than RGG Studio. So in my opinion, they get it. But just going further on in the interview, again from Richiro Yamada here, in the initial footage we had, Pai did look much younger. I asked them to change it though. Pai's an actress, so she is beautiful and takes care of her appearance, but in trailer scene, she's doing something like an undercover investigation. So we decided to go with a look that does not use much makeup. Among the female characters, talking about Pai, she is in the category of young and cute. So an older Pai would be perfect to show that Virtua Fighter Crossroads is going in a different direction than before. So there you have it, a main lady character in a fighting game getting actually older. Despite as sad as this is going to sound, in our genre, that's actually innovation. And I am very much here for it as someone who's getting older myself. Also, one thing about Pai specifically. So we know a lot about Cielo of our 4 new characters. In the IGN Japan interview, Richiro Yamada said that Pai, who is going to be like a mentor figure to Cielo, right? She might be a villain in another one of the new character stories. So it's not going to be all sunshines and rainbows depending on the new character's point of views and who you're in control of in the story mode. So we'll see how that plays out. Going back to the IGN Japan interview, they did ask, is diversity important for the new Virtua Fighter? And Richiro Yamada says here, for me, the Virtua Fighter series inevitably evokes an Eastern image. Many of the characters are from China or Japan, and editors note, yeah, most of the cast is China or Japan, like anyone else is a little bit rarer. And back to the interview here, even the characters from the West mostly use martial arts centered around Chinese boxing. Given this background and the fact that Crossroads features a collaboration with Western writers such as David Hayter and Brad Kane, we are looking to change that. Virtua Fighter is originally a game like a Kung Fu movie, same goes for Shenmue, which is stated to be a Virtua Fighter RPG originally. I actually struggled a lot with what was needed for a new Virtua Fighter story. When we Japanese think about story in a fighting game, we tend to go for manga style or anime style developments. In fact, many fighting games today are based off of manga. That's fun in its own way, but we want to pursue realism in this game, so we thought that would not work. We believe that having characters with diverse backgrounds is important as a modern expression. In fact, the first protagonist is a character born in Paraguay, that would be Cielo, and raised in the United States. This makes it understandable why a diverse group of internationally minded writers would be necessary for the game. However, this doesn't mean we simply follow the instructions of the Western writers. Apparently, Western writers are the ones who initially proposed Cielo as a superhero with overwhelming power. However, on the Japanese side, we felt more relatable life-size hero, coming of age story, as we talked about ago, would be more appropriate, and that's where we ended up in the current form. Now, this bit is from the One More Game interview, and talking about the fact, well, what does it actually play like? What about new players coming to the franchise? And Riichiro Yamada states here, Virtua Fighter Crossroads is really meant for new players. Fighting game purists want it to stay the same, but we want to create something unique that draws players in. As players get immersed in the world, they'll naturally learn the fundamentals and eventually stick around for the PvP, which I think is a funny way to phrase it. But at its core, we envision this as a single-player experience. Which for me, fighting game old head, I think this is a perfectly valid way to do it. This is kind of how Mortal Kombat does it, right? That's why Mortal Kombat is the biggest fighting game. You get people sold on the single player content, and then if they like it enough, they stick around for the actual fighting game aspect and fight other people. Virtua Fighter, again, a series traditionally very weak in single player and like narrative and lore and story and all that. Like quest mode back in VF4 was cool, but that's still, the game. That's just you going into versus, but just versus an AI. I think it's a smart approach personally, but going forward on the interview here, combat unfolds in an interesting hybrid format. As the narrative progresses and the protagonists like Cielo encounter tougher opponents, encounters begin in a free movement style reminiscent to Like a Dragon / Yakuza. However, major confrontations transition seamlessly into traditional side-by-side fighting game combat, bridging the narrative action with classic Virtua Fighter mechanics in a way not seen in franchises like Tekken or Street Fighter. When asked about, onboarding new players into a fighting game format, Yamada talks about this. I believe players are savvy enough to figure out how to work a fighting game. While popular fighting games rely on character tiers, Virtua Fighter has always been about individual player skill. Which, no, there's definitely tiers in VF, but I get what he's trying to say. But for newer players, the single-player portion is like a normal single-player game. Villa Sapara serves as a central hub, so you can do stories, all that, but there's progression, random encounters, mini-games. Not as many crazy mini-games as Yakuza is known for, but there definitely will be, open-world stuff on a smaller scale like, Kamurocho or any Yakuza-style game. So on top of the myriad of interviews, Riichiro Yamada also headed over to Twitter to answer some questions, and one very pertinent to myself. So on the Satan Shark, it says, when it comes to Virtua Fighter's lore, I think the game needs to give some answers. For example, as I've said before, it might finally be time to settle Jeffrey's, it says Saturn, mistranslation, Satan Shark story. If you don't know the lore, it's in this video. It's literally the best part of Virtua Fighter's lore. It's the only thing that has like any real character or fun to it. But the Satan Shark story, and yes, it's one hell of a shark, it earned its name, but it actually ends on a cliffhanger as Judgment 6, the now apparently defunct Illuminati, as we talked about earlier, captured the Satan Shark, which ideally was to make it part of the Dural program or something like that. As you can see in the cutscene here, we got all the classics, and Jeffrey, as we have confirmed in a previous video, will be in the game in some form. Playable character, who knows? But yeah, that story needs to be finished. This is the epic conclusion to the Satan Shark saga. Took 20 years, but we're here. Now, asked if there was any inspiration from Shenmue specifically. If you recall, Shenmue was, back in the day, originally going to be the Virtua Fighter RPG. At a concept stage, I wasn't consciously thinking about Shenmue, but as we continued development, I was reminded just how great it truly is. The fact that Shenmue's concept was created over 20 years ago is incredible. That said though, Virtua Fighter Crossroads is not a new Shenmue, nor is it a new Yakuza game. It's a new game delivering new experiences to players. That's our respect for Virtua Fighter, and that's what I believe is the Sega spirit. Which, for my money, good words. On the Shenmue note though, so talking about Yu Suzuki, who is the granddaddy of Shenmue and Virtua Fighter. When I first came up with the concept for this game, I had the chance to present it to Yu Suzuki. I was honestly so nervous. He was already a legend when I joined the company. When he praised the concept, I was truly happy. For a moment, I felt like I was that rookie from 20 years ago again. And hey, getting high praise from the big man himself, I get it. That would put butterflies in your stomach. And here's an interesting one on some of the inspirations. Making fighting game characters appear naturally in this world has been a real challenge. As I mentioned in an interview, and yes, you will find that in the link to interviews in the video description, one of my inspirations was the HBO drama series Watchmen. It's an incredible show, but not many people in Japan are familiar with it, so explaining the nuance to the team was quite difficult. But yeah, so not just Watchmen, but the HBO Watchmen, which in the context in the interviews, is making some surreal things feel like very grounded in reality. As Watchmen has a character like Dr. Manhattan, who's giant, blue, and naked and God, basically, right? And yet, even though he's giant, blue, naked, and God, he doesn't feel like a comic character. It feels very grounded, right? So that's sort of what the vibe he's going for. And just as a little bit of a closer, yes, Arabic support will be planned for the game. So lots of good stuff, lots of good knowledge about the game that is upcoming. Again, video description, all the links for all the interviews, it's there. And things are looking exciting. Because this is one of the games, like, yes, it took a long time to get to a new Virtua Fighter, assuredly, but they get it. For a long time, because, you know, we've been in the dark for a long time. What was happening with the game? Maybe it got canceled, who knows? But now we're here with a flurry of info, and the game is in good hands. Like, I'm here. Like, I've been here for years, Mr. Virtua Fighter shill, right? And I feel very confident they know what they're doing, both in keeping the original fans happy with how the gameplay looks, but also bringing a new audience. Because to be real, most of the people that are excited for this is a completely new audience. They don't really engage with the other games unless maybe they played them as a quote-unquote mini-game in the Yakuza games. So good times ahead, and this is looking like it's gonna hit real hard in a big way. Fighting games, we need more 3D fighting games, especially, you know, with Tekken sort of dominating the subgenre for so long. And Virtua Fighter, to be super real, is looking like it's poised to take the crown in a lot of ways. So, of course, check the channel for more Virtua Fighter updates as things come. I'll definitely be here for all of it. But that said, my friends, that is it for me, and that's it for the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Virtua Fighter.